You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. If you want to go kayaking in Mississippi or canoeing or kayamping, well, who do you talk to? Where do you start? We're going to learn that today on the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast.
Mississippi Outdoors is sponsored by Entergy Mississippi. Entergy is building a stronger and cleaner grid to power a brighter future and protect our great outdoors for generations to come.
You're listening to the Mississippi Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Wyatt. And today we get to learn about something called the Mississippi Paddle Mafia with Camille Richards here on the show. Camille, welcome.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate being you.
Yeah, I've enjoyed getting to meet you and talk to you. You know, prior to recording the podcast, I've learned a lot already. But the one thing I didn't ask, I'm going to start with that. What is the Mississippi Paddle Mafia?
So there's a long legend that started about 12 to 15 years ago. There's a paddling race down in Gulf Springs, in Ocean Springs. In Ocean Springs, in Ocean Springs.
One of those fields or springs.
Battle of the Bayou. And so there was a big group that came down from central Mississippi who were racers, and they got together and they did pretty well in the race. And so afterwards, they got the whole group from central Mississippi together and they all sat. A lot of big groups. Some of them sat there and they had their glasses on. They had a serious look and they had their arms crossed. Somebody made the comment that picture looked like we were the mafia. So the name stuck. So they started a Facebook page. And at that time, it was called the Central Mississippi Paddling Mafia. And since then, we've shortened it to the Mississippi Paddling Mafia just because it does incorporate the entire state of paddlers now.
Okay. And kayaks, mainly kayaking, and I guess canoeing, is that included?
Canoeing and stand-up paddle boards.
Okay. Absolutely. Oh, the stand-up kind also.
Yep.
I wanted to clarify that because, somebody might hear Mississippi Paddle Mafia and they think, fraternity initiation or
right.
all the bad kids in fourth grade like me back when they used to paddle. No, paddling
correct.
Up and down
No
rivers.
Principles involved. No, yeah.
That's great. Well, now, how'd you get involved?
So I got involved, actually it was on Mother's Day of 2009. And I do not have children, so I was out enjoying the Mother's Day myself, and I was out paddling by myself. And I used to do that a lot. And I was paddling in Pelahatchie Creek, Pelahatchie Bay, and I rounded a corner and I heard that familiar sound. And you enjoying a cold one on the water. And I was expecting a couple fishermen to be around the bend, and I paddled around the bend, and there was another single female paddling. So I just paddled up to her and ended up talking to her, and that was my introduction to the paddling mafia. She was the first member that I met, and she introduced me to the whole crew. So then I didn't have to paddle by myself anymore. I had this huge collection of people, and by that time it was only about 250 people. And now I think we're upwards of 2,500 people.
Wow.
A part of the mafia. So We've definitely grown over the years.
2,500 people.
Yes.
And kayaking, canoeing, the stand-up paddle boards, those types of things. So it's really a whole community of people, and you guys kind of get together and also compete at certain events.
Right. So we have a couple of connections to the water sport racing world. Some of them are very, very competitive, and they usually post on our group 2 or 3 times a year what the races are, the dates well in advance, so that we can get plenty of practice in. I do not race anymore. I had a great time doing it. Ended up with too many kayaks because of racing. You'd got to have one for each type of water, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So my collection has dwindled, so I'm not racing anymore. But racing was a really big draw because it got you together to all train together. So you learn a lot of really good techniques just by training and doing that.
So take me back for you, kayaking in general. When did that become a thing for you? Where did that all start?
So probably my husband and I met in 2004, and he had a kayak and a canoe hanging in his garage. I'll be honest, I'm not much of a swimmer. I never really learned how to swim, and I've never really been crazy about, getting in the water. My idea of kayaking was whitewater kayaking.
Okay. Yeah.
So you see there, exactly, you always end up wet. You always end up in the water. I had no idea that there was this flat water kayaking or canoeing where the goal is to stay in the boat and not to get wet. And that really gave me a different perspective. And then learning about the different waterways. We've got some really great books and written by Mississippians on the Mississippi waterways. And once you start looking at those, and people ask me all the time, where do you go paddling? And I kind of look at them and like, you do understand there's water everywhere in our state. So just getting to know the waterways and getting into it and learning the different ecosystems. I mean, that really is what got me into it. Is it's not the same in the Yazoo River as it is on the Big Black. It's not the same on the Leaf River as it is on Pelahatchie Creek. Yeah. So that really drew me in. And of course, you know, the Mafia helped a lot with the different characters you get to paddle with and play with.
As far as in the state of Mississippi, places that you've been, that might not even be fair to ask, hey, list them off. But I mean, yeah, pretty much everywhere, North Mississippi to the coast and all points in between.
Right. And again, the benefit of being with a big group is you get the benefit of talking to other people and getting their maps. That's probably the easiest thing to do, because looking on a regular map, you're not going to see a boat ramp that may be kayak friendly. Some boat ramps do not allow non-motorized boats to launch from it. So being able to talk to somebody who's been down that waterway is very helpful. Great example, the Leaf River. So Leaf River runs kind of central, dumps into the Pascagoula. Areas near Hattiesburg, you're going to get a lot more water traffic. But more north, when you're in Seminary and those areas, and it's a little bit harder to find those off the beaten path ramps. So being able to connect with people. Up north, you go up to Tishomingo, and there's the Bear Creek up there. Another gorgeous paddle with beautiful cedar trees all along the way. Very little motorboat traffic you're going to find up there. But knowing kind of where to enter and where to get off, especially if there's not a canoe outfitter up there that can help you. Knowing those areas and just being able to reach out to people who have done it before is very helpful.
We actually do a launch at the Mississippi Tishomingo State Park up there for Bear Creek.
And at the bridge?
Yeah. Yes. And I've done it a couple times, and when I was doing it, I was really surprised that, hey, this is in Mississippi, because the water's super clear. You can see the bottom of it. Like, really? It's just, it's up near, the Tennessee, like northwest Alabama area. Yep. So there are more like rocky condition that would be conducive to that. But
now, Chip, do you own a kayak yourself?
I don't own a kayak myself, but I've done who hasn't done the Okatoma River down in South Mississippi? But I have done it overnight on the Big Black as well, which it's a very fast river.
It is.
And I woke up in the middle of the night to a boar in the campsite.
Really?
Yeah, maybe a story for
a
another
little bit
time.
of everything.
Yeah.
That's funny. So I guess that led me to the question about you mentioned owning several different kayaks, but I guess does that group or that number of people that are a part of, the Mississippi Paddling Mafia, are there those that don't own, they just rent or, to go on the trips?
So, most people know about Facebook groups, that there's certain questions that you ask, and that is one of the questions that we ask. It is not an exclusive. If you don't own one, we're not going to say, oh, you can't be a part of the group. Yeah. We do encourage it, but we also have a classified page. So it's a great way for people to kind of get involved. And if you don't have a kayak, we're going to get you involved, and we're going to get you hooked up to the people that have some good used ones. I'll tell people, instead of going and spending $150 for a cheap no-name brand at the big box store, wait and spend that money and spend a little bit more on a really good used kayak. You can get some really good deals, especially this time of year when people are, realizing that, they did it for a couple seasons is not their thing.
Yeah.
Get something that's in a better quality. So we help out a lot of our newbies. And then I have my whole crew, my whole fleet, as I call it. I have a trailer. So I keep I store them on my trailer. I can push them underneath my lean-to so they're protected. And anybody that wants to go, I'll bring my whole trailer out and get them used to. And I know the boats that are a little bit more stable. It depends on your size, depends on your shape, and it depends on what type of waterway you're going to.
A typical, day trip, weekend trip, how far of a distance are you covering, and what goes into setting up transportation and those type of things? So
that's a really good point. So the out and back versus the one way.
Yeah.
And we have a little joke about that. It's the shuttle. The shuttle is there's an old saying or old wives' tale, I don't know what it is, about a fox, a head of lettuce, a rabbit, and a farmer. And how do you get all three of those things across without getting the rabbit and the fox on the boat together and the lettuce and the rabbit on the same? Right. So that is what shuttling is all about. And sometimes it's not even worth it. So going on an out and back trip, so basically you're putting it at the same location, you're coming back to the same location. Sometimes those are easier to navigate, especially if you're with people that you really don't know how far they can go. Yeah. If you're on a one-way and if you're going a certain distance, there's no way to cut off that distance. Perfect example on Upper Pearl from Highway 13 down to Lee County Water Park. That's a good 9 miles. If the water's low, if it's not flowing, you don't have much of a current. You're going to be paddling the entire way.
Right.
9 miles is a lot for a newer paddler. Sure. So I would probably say, it really depends on who you're going with. Pelahatchie Creek is a really great place that we like to start. You can start at the 471 boat ramp. You can put in there. You can go up the creek. You can go out to the bay. All these little sloughs that you can go in and explore. Tons of wildlife. Very safe. Not a lot of places to get out of the water, but it's easy to get back to the boat ramp. So you can go all the way to McClure's Lodge. You can literally hit the back of it on Pelahatchie Creek. That's about 5.5 miles from the boat ramp, and then turn around and come back. So that could be a good 9 to 10 mile paddle. Okay. Or you can just go to the Lakeland Bridge and come back. That's a good 2 mile.
Yeah. What, now this is sort of a history nerd question here, but you mentioned the Leaf River, and I think about all the stories and the Free State of Jones stories and all the things that regarding the Leaf River, Civil War stories, that include the Big Black and places on. Right. I guess my question is, from a historical perspective, in a kayak or a canoe, you get to see places that really the rest of us only read about.
Absolutely.
I guess.
Yeah.
Are you a history fan? Yes.
I am. I love Native American history, but I also love archaeology.
Okay.
So anybody who walks in my house, they look at me. I've got rocks and stones and pieces of wood all over the place, and that's what I love about history. I love arrowheads. We found numerous arrowheads, pottery, Chunky River, the Chickasahey. Probably the Chickasahey you can read. There probably has the most number of fossils on any waterway. Even you can paddle up and look at the sides of some of the water. I mean, where the water, as the water decreases, the sides of the clay have fossils in them. You can paddle up to them, you can see them, you can touch them. It really is amazing. That's cool. The history, the American Indian history, if you look at a lot of the names of our creeks, most of them are Native American. Mm-hmm. Pelahatchie Creek is a perfect example. It's hurricane blown timber is what Pelahatchie means. Hurricane blown timber. Wow. And that's from Choctaw.
Yeah, that's really cool. So, what's the most interesting or outstanding memory for you of encountering wildlife on one of your paddle trips?
So the biggest wildlife we encounter, as you can imagine, are alligators.
Okay.
Not necessarily in a bad way. There are certain times of the year that you have to be very careful. This time of year, it is breeding season, and once the babies get born, the mothers get very territorial. You can have a gator. If you get too close, she will let you know. She will come out in the water, and when she does not submerge, she'll usually do a roll. And it's like a tsunami coming at you, especially when you're in a little boat. And I think it was around that same time in 2009 when I was out paddling by myself that I encountered one of those in late March. And it was it was nerve-wracking. It got my attention. I realized that, you just have to be very aware. There's, knock on wood, to my knowledge, there's never been a unprovoked attack on a human in the state of Mississippi. I think we are smarter than, maybe some other states who dangle chicken carcasses off their kayaks. I would not recommend that. I know our alligator population is pretty big, but it's just about being smart. It's just like in anything else. You got to be smart and be aware of where you're paddling and, know where you are. But that's probably my scariest adventure is having a gator roll on me. We've had many encounters with pelicans or birds getting caught in line. When I first joined the mafia, a good friend of mine had just rescued a pelican. And unfortunately, the leg had to be amputated, but they were able to rescue and get a couple of feet of fishing line out from around his leg.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about that? That's cool. Chip, do you have a question?
I was just going to say, when she had first mentioned that she liked going up and down the Peleachi Bay area, the first thing that came to my mind was, man, the only time I've been there was when I was a Ricky Flint on that airboat looking at all those alligators. And I don't know and I don't know if that'd be the first spot I'd pick to go kayaking.
Well, you really don't see them, but we do a lot of night paddles too. And especially if you're on a stand-up paddleboard, you see a lot more of them at night because those eyes glow.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, and I was reading through the notes before I got to meet you, Camille, and there was a note there about the Hall of Fame. Mm-hmm. So you're in the Hall of Fame, and which Hall of Fame, and for what?
So there is a paddling trail called the Florida Circumnavigation Paddling Trail, and it's 1,515 miles. Starts at Pensacola, Big Lagoon State Park in Pensacola, goes all the way around the state of Florida, and ends at Fort Clinch, just south of Georgia border, near Jacksonville, Florida.
Wow, 1,500
miles. And it is a very well mapped out 26-segment trail. And it, talk about a different ecosystem every segment. It's amazing. I did grad school in Florida, and so that's my connection to Florida. I still have family that lives there. And actually, I was looking through an outdoors magazine and was reading about the Everglades and reading about the chickees that they build. So when you're visiting, if you ever camp out in the Everglades, you really don't want to camp out on some of the swampy areas if you go on the inside. So they make these man-made platforms that you can camp on. Okay. So I was reading about tours on that, and it had a link to the Florida CT Trail. And so I got onto that, and I said, that would a really cool trail. I really want to do that. So in 2016, I started planning, and I ordered the maps, and I got in touch with the trail guides, and kind of like the Mississippi River has river angels. Well, they have trail angels. Okay. So you sign up, they get your GPS coordinates, and once you start, they track you along the way. They make sure that you cover every single mile that you say you're going to cover. If you need help, they can help you. And so I started that trip on November 14th, 2016. And did it in sections. I didn't do it in all one trip, but I paddled 2 to 3 weeks at a time over 5 different times, and I completed it on December 31st, 2018.
Wow.
I became the 4th solo. Was that?
About a month and a half?
No, a year.
Oh, a year.
Yeah, so 2016 to 2018.
Okay.
So it was almost, so a year, 2 years. Right
2 years.
Yeah.
In
sections.
So I was going to say, 1,500. I was trying to do the math, and I knew it didn't equate. So, but 2 years of time to actually put in the time.
So I'd take off work anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks at a time. Driving down there was the worst part. Getting down to the point where you stopped the last time. Yeah. Unloading your boat, packing everything up, and getting on the water. And 85% of it was completely solo, self-supported. My dad was on his sailboat for the first 5 days, and so I slept on his boat whenever I could. The rest of it, I would camp along the way. I had all my own gear. A couple times I'd have my mom, my stepdad in their RV, and they would bring me supplies at any boat ramp they could get to. So, but it was a fantastic adventure.
It sounds like it.
It was great.
A once-in-a-lifetime thing, right?
Absolutely. I would definitely do it again, though. I know I actually have paddled sections of it. The first female veteran that completed it, I paddled about 250 miles with her in 2020.
Okay. And you were the 4th solo female. Mm-hmm. And 28th person overall to complete it. Correct. Wow.
And I think there's 50 now that have completed it since then. So, yeah.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. Every year we have a reunion, go back down to Florida, and all of us Hall of Famers have to give a little talk and talk to the people who are doing it and go through all the fears, the good, the bad, the ugly, what you need to prepare for and what there's no way to prepare for.
Mm. It reminds me a lot of like the ACT or the PCT trails that everyone, the continental divides. Yeah. But paddling.
A lot of the people who have done the CT have also done the Appalachian.
Yeah. I've heard that there's a way to paddle from like the tip of, is it Washington State and then get all the way to the Mississippi River?
Yeah. Yeah.
You ever thought about doing that?
I have, actually. I'd love to do the Mississippi. My husband and I did 150 miles down the Missouri River in 2022, and that was amazing. Talk about history.
I bet, yeah.
If you follow Lewis and Clark.
Okay, I was going to ask you about that. The Lewis and Clark route.
Yes.
And again, like I said earlier, that's sort of seeing it from their perspective. There's only one way to see it from their perspective, is the way you did it.
Yep.
What was that like?
It was incredible. So you can go through the Montana Bureau of Land Management and get a book, and it's about 275 pages. And it covers every single stopping point, every homestead, every battle site, every Indian massacre, every historical point along their trip from 1804 to 1806. Okay. And what really is fascinating to me is you go along that area and there is no sign of these thriving cities that used to be along the waterway. Mm-hmm. And again, me, loving archaeology, I'd love to get out there and do some digs. I know they've already done them, but just the history alone in those areas, just standing there, I was just in awe.
Those guys, Lewis and Clark, upriver?
Yeah, they went upriver. I did not. I went down.
You were smarter.
Yeah, we went in, and it was actually at a very low point. It was drought. It was about 11 feet below normal stage when we started. And during the 18 days on the river, we encountered about 7 days of torrential rain, and 2 days we could not paddle at all. And by the time we got off the river, it was 5 feet above the regular stage.
Wow, so that is a lot of rain.
Yeah, the current picked up quite a bit along the way. Yeah,
I bet. Okay, so that lends itself then to the next part of the conversation, which is safety. And that's something you train others from a safety standpoint when paddling, right?
Yep. So that's something that I kind of fell into because whenever I would lend out my kayaks, I wanted to make sure people knew what they were doing. Yeah. So I had a couple people say, hey, do you mind if I videotape this? Because I've got some Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts that I would like to. And then it morphed into that, hey, come to the Girl Scouts meeting, come to the Boy Scouts meeting. And then it morphed into, what about us? Let's train our own. I have taken some American Canoe Association courses. I'm not certified. I do not pretend to be. The problem with some of those courses, they're very costly. What I wanted to do was make training affordable, make it accessible for everybody that got on the waterway. So what we would do a couple times, the Jackson Yacht Club has been very generous and let us use their pool before it opens. It gets a little bit chilly, but we'll don some wetsuits, and we have some expert paddlers who are ACA certified who come out and do some demonstrations. And then we get in the water and we do those things. We do self-rescue. We do buddy rescue. We teach people, if you do fall out, how do you get back in? What if your kayak's full of water? What type of kayak do you have? Is a sit on top of, is a sit in? What is a bolster? What's what keeps it afloat? Do you have a dry compartment that could keep it afloat? If it doesn't, it's going to sink. So just little things like that. I mean, that turn into a big thing, especially in an emergency situation.
Yeah, or a long way away from anyone else.
Absolutely.
And I know this is obvious question of the answer, but that type of course and that type of training, you would recommend that for anyone who's going to go do it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even if I'll have a lot of people who bring their kids out, and I think that's super, super important. Yeah. What a great role model. Being a dad that is saying, you know what, I know my limits. I know what I know, but I also know what I don't know. So let's sign up here. And Strong River has been a great supporter. Me and a friend of mine who works for Salvation Army Disaster Relief, and she is certified. She does disaster recovery. So we'll go out every year, and it's a great way to get people and to see their excitement. And then sometimes you come into people and you teach them some things, and they say, you know what, this isn't for me. But I'm so glad they learned it in a safe environment instead of them getting out in a bad environment.
Sure. You've been all over the country, it sounds like, paddling. Mm-hmm. It's interesting too, like that term, because I think most of us, we think canoeing, kayaking, and I even saw kayamping, right? Did I say that right?
Right, that's
where
right.
It's kayaking and camping combined.
Right.
But paddling is the term that you use, and in that community, which kind of covers it all, right?
Yes, it is.
That one word.
And if you look up, there's paddling.com. So that's probably one of our good resources. They have great articles, great reviews on different type of outdoor gear or boats. And it dates by, there might be a boat that you find used on, Facebook Marketplace. And you can go and find a review from 12, 15 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's very reliable and a lot of good safety tips too.
Okay. So of Florida, the Midwest, the Mississippi River and other parts of the country, you've seen a lot of it. The waterways, rivers, streams, the water that we have in Mississippi in our state, how does it compare to these other areas?
Gosh, it's so hard just because I think our wildlife tends to vary because, the fishermen, we have a ton of fishermen down here. You may go up to the Missouri River and, some of the fish they have up there aren't really desirable. So the fishermen have a lot to do with it. Hunting, we do a lot of camping on some of the waterways. Some of the hunting property kind of limits some of the areas you really want to go in. Really, the waterways and the environment. I mean, you look at the cypress trees. If you go to an area that has a lot of cypress, you're going to typically get more clear water because that's what the cypress trees do. They filter the water out, and so you go to these beautiful cypress swamps, and you can find some of that in New Orleans and not New Orleans, sorry, in Louisiana. Yeah. But when you come to Mississippi, it's just it's different. To me, it's, even though it's a swamp, it's a little bit less swampy, Sure, there's some places that may be.
Well, and that's what I was thinking, like Chip, when he was, describing clear water, in Northeast Mississippi or, just this side of Pickwick and the Tennessee River, compared to what you see in the Delta, compared to what you see on the coast. Yeah. Like the diversity of things you can see in one state here.
Exactly. And
you don't have that in every other state.
Right. So a lot of things that we talk about, the Pearl River. Pearl River has a lot of silt. And so it's going to be a lot of brown. Same thing with the Mississippi River. Yeah. And I think the Big Black also is a very silt. So that's the things you got to look at. What is the bottom of the river going to be like? If it's silt, you're not going to get clear water. If it's rocky and if it has a lot of cypress, then you're probably going to have a lot more clear water.
Yeah. I think my favorite thing about the Big Black was it goes through it's the DeSoto National Forest, right?
Yes.
And it goes right through the wilderness area of that. And I saw owls flying overhead, like big cranes that I never see those when I'm just, out camping at like a park or something. Yeah. But we were really in it. Like I woke up in the morning and there was I saw beaver by the water, doing its thing. And I'd never, you don't see those in the wild very often. It's a really cool experience. Or like big gar swimming right by you and things like that.
And especially when you're out there and there's not a lot of fishing boats and there's no mudders out there. That's what I love about not having a motorized, vehicle, is that you do see a lot more fish and you see them feeding. I mean, all those pictures you see of the bass that are up there, you can see them, right? And they'll come right up to you.
How about that?
Because you're not a threat unless you have your fishing pole.
Okay. The sounds, all right, and the noise. That's another thing I was going to ask you about. I had an experience, this is, ever how many months ago, where I went to the big Indian Mound at Nanawaya. Yeah. And when I went out to it, it's on a road going out to it where you're a long way away. And if there's not a car coming down that one road, you're just by yourself. And I was sort of struck by the quiet, the sound, where you're far enough away from any human noise at all. It just has a different, I don't even know, it's almost like music, everything that you hear. And you hear things you don't notice most of the time. And I would think you run into that and have run into that a lot on your trips.
Absolutely. That's why a lot of us like to get farther away, and that's the whole camping term. Okay. Most people, like you said, like Chad said, going to a park when you have your car there and there's cars going late, or there's kids playing or whatever. When you get in your kayak and you put everything you want in there and you go to some place where you can't hear a road anymore, you can't see anybody anymore, you don't hear airplanes anymore. When you get to that point and you get out and you're on a sandbar or you're up in the woods, wherever, you're right. It's a totally different experience. You can come upon a family of squirrels and They probably have never seen somebody in their habitat ever. The beavers, absolutely. And especially in the morning when you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning, you hear this huge slap on the water. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
I have a huge affinity for beaver sticks. So the sticks that beavers gnaw on, and it used to be the green wood, and they gnaw it off and they leave that little tiny bit of bark, and it leaves that beautiful pattern on a stick. I'll paddle up and grab that stick and take it home, and it's part of my collection. Love it.
That's great. What's next for you? What's the next big goal?
So after I did the Florida CT, the one thing that I kind of wanted to do to make it more personal to me is I wanted to bring it home. So the paddle from Pensacola to Pascagoula, it's only about 84 miles.
Okay.
It's not very well mapped out. It's only 84 miles. If I did 1,500, I could do 84.
Sure, absolutely.
There's a lot of barrier islands that you can use and you can kind of skip over, but there's also a lot of big boat traffic. There's a lot of fishing traffic, barge traffic along that area. The Gulf Coast has a lot of trade that comes in. So just being aware of that and kind of looking at that, that's probably the next thing I'd want to do. It'd probably only take me 3, maybe 4 days. Planning will take a lot longer.
Yeah, sure.
But that's probably the next big things that I want to do is just to bring it home, to make that Florida CT, complete the circle to my home state of Mississippi.
What if somebody's listening and they're like, you know what? Okay, I've always wondered. I always thought it was cool to. I never did just jump in with both feet. I know there's a pun there. We're talking about a kayak, but okay, it's time I'm going to do it.
Right.
And they want to maybe reach out to you or someone like you, or the Mississippi Paddling Mafia.
Right.
Where do they need to go? What do you want to tell them?
So exactly. So the Facebook page is open to everybody. So Mississippi Paddling Mafia, if you go on there and answer a few questions, one of the administrators, and that includes me, will get back to you. We have one of the administrator. I think he's retired now and he monitors it all the time. Kelly McGinnis. He's world renowned Ocoee River whitewater guide.
Okay.
Just amazing, great guy, and he will get you in touch with one of us who can get you borrowing a boat. He has tons of canoes. He'll get you in a canoe. I have one of my very, very good friends had never been in a kayak, and she joined the group and came out on a camping trip with us. Didn't own a tent. I got her a tent, got her a boat. She's now one of my very good friends. And for her taking that leap, that really meant a lot. And that was 3 years ago. So it definitely can happen. She's got 2 boats now, by the way, and all of her own camping gear. But yeah, I mean, if you want to get outdoors, if you want to see what the waters of Mississippi have to offer, it really is amazing, the different diversity in different areas of the state.
Yeah.
Going down and paddling on the brackish waters. Pascagoula is a great, great area. Mm-hmm. You've got these beautiful swamp areas, and it's almost like a maze. If you look, there's some really good drone footage of kayak groups and outfitters that are down there. And they'll show you their drone footage of the different maps. It's easier to, when you get down there to kind of navigate, but when you're looking at it, it looks like a maze. But it's a great way to get down there and investigate the area. People love going down to the beach. It's something different you can do instead of going to the beach every day. Drive a couple miles to Ocean Springs. All of the Biloxi's got a couple of really good kayaking groups. So highly recommend it.
Do they make kayaks for really tall people?
They
Long
do.
Legs and big feet.
They do. So a lot of the ones will have, either an L or an XL. And it has nothing to do with weight. It all is a height thing. One thing that people don't realize is most kayaks have foot pedals. So the foot pedals are to brace you. And one thing that I always do on the safety classes is not only teach you safety, but also teach you proper technique. So people, the number one thing, the complaint you get, my arms hurt, my shoulders hurt. If your arms and your shoulders hurt and your elbows hurt when you're paddling, you're not doing it right. It really is a core thing. And the pedals are what give you that kind of push when you're pushing. And that really, for a tall person, is the key, is finding pedals that are long enough so that your legs can be outstretched with just a slight bend in them.
Yeah, cool. And I think the last thing for me is we need to get you and Scooter and Chip together, television trip, for Mississippi Outdoors. And I want a photo with those sunglasses on with Chip I want Chip wearing the dark sunglasses.
There you go,
and,
with his arms crossed.
With his arms crossed and
Hey,
Mississippi Mafia.
We have Mafia t-shirts. We have our own t-shirts. We have a gator and a Mafia hat, and he's pretty mean looking. So we'll get you a shirt.
Yeah. You up for that, Chip? Glasses
I'm down. I just got to convince the right people.
Camping trip. Yeah. I'll loan you a boat.
That's great. Camille, thanks so much for stopping by, telling us a little bit about your experiences. And it's really, really cool. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you all for listening to Mississippi Outdoors Podcast, and we'll see you outdoors.